we be planning to implement to keep Miami a top destination for multicultural tourism throughout 2025 and beyond?
Okay. Couple things. Couple of thoughts. I want to say the Philadelphia at that time, the Multicultural Affairs Congress was one of the first multicultural tourism departments. I mean, 20 years ago. So
1987.
Yeah. Okay. So I need to give a shout out to Philadelphia, because for many of us, as we were coming up, we mirrored some of our activities and our departments and at that time, that's what it was called. After that. So shout out to Philadelphia. As far as us looking forward, we're continuing to build relationships for the new year. One of the things in our priorities that we want to highlight really is music. Miami traditionally is known for music, but we don't maybe elevate it in a way that we should, and that's one of the things that we're going to kind of go deeper in to see how we can build that. Now, I don't know if you hear any Southern drawl in my talk. Do you hear? Oh, okay. They're like, yeah. So I'm from Nashville, Tennessee. So music was everything. That was our whole brand. And so in Miami, part of what we're going to do in our multicultural team, but really as a bureau overall, because music is a universal language, right? Whatever your background, you can come together on a certain type of music. We're going to work on how to elevate that more from Miami as one. I think another area is our art program, our Art of Black Miami program, which is another large connector in this community. We have a very large and unique and creative cultural vibe here in Miami, and we really want to elevate that more and more each year. So our Art of Black Miami program, our art and culture program in general, is a way that we're elevating in the future year, and you'll hear a little bit more from that from Petra. I think she's doing a panel. Multiculturalmiami.com. I just want to make sure we talked about the guides, and Sheila's correct. It's very important that we have this information available for somebody. If you go to multiculturalmiami.com, you will see some of our offerings, and also we have some information out front with QR codes where you can go to that as well for our destination.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Sheila, what changes do you foresee in the tourism industry in the next few years, and how is PHL Diversity preparing to address these changes?
Let me grab some information right here in case you asked that question. I think as we're seeing attacks on DEI, A, and B, by the way, first of all, let me explain to you what DEI and B is, because people think that's one monolithic thing. It's not. Mm-hmm. Diversity is a fact. Mm-hmm. Inclusion is an action. Without that action, diversity is a waste of time. Let's focus on that. So diversity is a fact, a number or a fraction. Diversity is the action that makes, inclusion is the action that makes diversity meaningful. Equity is a practice, and belonging is a feeling. So we are both in the practice of making sure that people have a sense of belonging when they come to our cities, right? People focus too much on diversity and not enough on the inclusion, the equity, and the belonging. So, what was your question again? I got so caught up. What are we doing in the future?
Yes,
gotcha.
yes.
Don't feel bad.
Gotcha. Because that's so important to me, because I think people don't get that DEI and B. Yeah. But in the future, we're going to have to double down on that, because as you can see, we've got Meta and Google getting rid of their DEIA programs. You know, the further you get away from George Floyd's murder, the less we see the commitment to DEIA and B, period. And you see people coming up with task force and committees, DEIA committees, right after that. So when I talk to people and they want to pick a city, I'm not trying to sort of compete with every city and say our statues are better, our food is better. I'm going to say, is there a focus on DEIA in that city? Because there's a focus on DEIA and B in Philly. Do you all have a multicultural or diversity section? And if so, did you have it before 2020? Otherwise, that's a little bit performative, and we focus on intention. We've been doing this since 1987. How long you been doing it?
Oh gosh.
Long time, right?
15 plus years.
Exactly. So the point is, you talk about the future. The future is sort of erratic based on what's happening. So you got to double down on what you're committed to, and we're doubling down on this. And I like to say I'm looking forward to talking about the data that shows that multicultural, diverse, pick a name, conventions and meetings and tourism matters, and it's the bottom line. DI&B is a lovely way for people to behave, but it's more importantly, it's a business strategy. And so I'm going to give you some numbers here about Philadelphia. Since January 2023 to December 2024, the diversity division, my division, brought 102,591 room nights to Philadelphia. 102,000. We had 45,000 hotel rooms, 15,000 peak nights, and I'm going to say multi-millions of dollars of impact. Because again, when people come, we're connecting them to the communities. We're connecting them to the restaurants that are outside. And I also work with the LGBT caucus, the Hispanic caucus, all these caucuses to say, bring your business owners to me so we can make sure that they are benefiting. When the National Black MBAs came a few months ago, I said, do you all want to connect with the city? And they're like, yeah, we were looking for a social responsibility project. And the easiest thing to do is to put some socks and a toothbrush in a bag for the homeless. Yes, that's great. But I said, what if we connect you with Northern Children's Services, which is a home for at-risk youth who may have a small blemish on their record for selling weed or something like that. If you can sell weed, you're an entrepreneur.
Right.
Sorry, if you can count. And so you're already on the other side of being a Black MBA. So you connect the Black MBA conference with these kids at the Northern Children's Services to see the other side of the success, if you will. So that's the types of things that I see that we're going to continue to do in the future, because we're going to keep getting attacked and we're going to keep having to fight back. You got to double down. The other thing, I don't know if you heard, is they're trying to move away from the letters DI and B and move to a term called social inclusion in the future, because that takes away the focus on Black and brown, which is what it is. You know, when people say DEI hire, they're saying that's a Black and brown hire. So if you say social inclusion, it includes veterans, it includes people with disabilities, and so it's a way to make sure that they can't just target us. So that's what I see as the future for me in our industry.
Yeah. I've actually read, not to get off subject, but
Get off subject.
About DEI. There was something on internet, maybe it was Facebook the other day, that said that a DEI hire, they were referring to Kamala.
Vice President Harris.
That's the new
term.
New term for the N-word. So.
Right. So you got a lot of them were the old boy network hire. Yes. So we're due for some diversity.
Yes, okay. Connie, how do you measure the impact of your multicultural tourism initiatives on the local community, both economically and socially?
Mm-hmm. So with this, and it's interesting, it goes back to, you're right, you know, these programs and the intent has to be something that's long-term. It has to be something that's part of the culture of an organization, because some of the ROI and some of the way you measure won't happen tomorrow. Some of it happens 5 years from now. Some of it, you know, happens immediately. And you have to realize that, you have to know that. And you also have to have leadership and a committee and a group who support you that understand that. Because what will happen is, if you don't see what you think you're supposed to immediately, then some may pull away from the efforts when it comes to DEIA and things of that nature. So stay very alert. I won't even say stay alert that that does happen. And so for some of you that are in that space, continue to push, because it's a, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Exactly. It is a marathon, not a sprint. Now, what we do, various ways, we look at some of the businesses that we have touched, and we ask them to help tell their story, but also tell the story of how we help touch them and how we help them be a part of their matriculation. So we keep up with success stories for businesses and events that we have touched is one way. One of the things that we do is that when we do this outreach to businesses, we also ask them to become partners of the Convention and Visitors Bureau. So part of their becoming partners, paid partners, is a way that we can keep up with from a numerical sense. Part of it is just staying the course, looking from time to time, monitoring where things are in the community. Then 3 years later, where are things at that point? It is talking with our stakeholders. I mentioned Ed Ponder, Metris Bats, also who is affiliated locally in historic Overtown and things. We have to stay engaged to know if the things that we're doing as a destination make sense to them, and also is helping extend and grow what's happening in the community. So part of how we track is numerical. You have to have some numerical tracking. You have to have something if the question is asked. You got to be able to pull some type of data, and we have that. But also, it is honestly just talking to the community in which you're here to serve, because you're part of the community, to make sure that what you're doing is being effective.
Okay, thank you. Sheila, can you share some success stories from PHL diversity efforts that have had a significant impact on Philadelphia's tourism industry?
Well, I would say my success stories are in progress. I took the first year to learn the industry and learn the city. Currently, I think I've got an amazing board that I work with of 30 to 35 people. I think a couple of them are here. Mariska Bogle, you in the room? Stand up, please. There you go. So, and is Sean Murray here? I don't know. So, they are working with the pipeline of hospitality. Some of the students here are with their program, and they are feeding the pipeline. You talk about 250. Philadelphia in 2026 is going to have all these amazing things happening, from World Cup to Major League Baseball All-Star. And if you can't get enough, if you can't get your food delivered now because of lack of staff, how are you going to prepare for all these people coming to Philadelphia? So what we're doing is working to create a pipeline. I'm creating a program that's going to include Montgomery Community College, Temple, Cheney, and we're going to be trying to make sure that these students are in the pipeline and are already on the go. So when 2026 comes, we've got some people, as well as people in the city, ready to support that. So that's one of the things one of the programs that I'm working on. Another program I'm working on is with the Diverse Caucus Committee. Those caucuses that I mentioned, the chambers, the Hispanic Chamber, African American Chamber, and Korean Chamber, and LGBTQ Chamber, they all have something, they work together called the Diverse Caucus. So they can go to City Hall and say, look, this tax that you're putting on businesses is wrong. And that's much more powerful than just anybody going separately. So I'm working with them to make sure that, again, they're going to benefit, and then I'm working with them for leads, and they're working with me to bring businesses. Because all these people in the room, with the exception maybe of the students, and the students probably too, belong to associations. So if you're a journalist, you belong to maybe to Hispanic journalists, well, that's a convention that we'd like to have. Or you may belong to, if you're a doctor, or if you're an AKA, I believe I'm sitting next to one, you belong to a group that we want to have. So we want to make sure we get the Hispanic journalists, we the AKAs, the Deltas, the Links, the Black MBAs, all of that. And so that's going to require some direct intentional work. So my programs that I'm creating, in addition to feeding the pipeline, are also feeding the pipeline so these meetings and conventions know that it's been 8 years, it's been 6 years, it's been 10 years, it's time to come back. And then you create programs and an experience so that they feel it. That's the thing. They can go anywhere. They bring millions of dollars to a city. So you got to make sure that they feel it when they come, so that they come back, so they choose you. So that's really what I'm doing. It's making sure that I'm very intentional about creating experiences that bring people back.
Very good. Okay, I have one more question for you, Connie. We're running out of time. We actually run out of time, but we're going to do this last question. What challenges have you faced in promoting diversity within Miami's tourism sector, and how have you overcome them?
I think, well, that's an interesting one because it changes, challenges, I guess it changes. When I first arrived in Miami, I could really tell, and even from me coming here, Miami, at least my view of Miami was in one way. I saw kind of one look. And I think that may be true if in some years that people thought of Miami as one way, whether they thought of it from Miami Vice or whether they thought of it from a TV show that they saw. So I guess a challenge early on that I think, honestly, I hope, and I may ask you, because sometimes we have to ask to see how our marketing is going, is that there's not a diversity in backgrounds and culture in Miami, and it really is. And so I think that was a challenge when it comes to our overall marketing, especially for the Black and brown communities. I think that's changing. I think that I'm hopeful that some of the things in our department has been helpful in doing that. But I think that's growing. So that was probably one of the changes. And I think you'll talk about, you mentioned this earlier, from a political standpoint, because this is something that we have been doing. It didn't just start. We know to press on and continue to do what we're doing. So, I'll just kind of go there with the politics. For us, it's a challenge because, there's so many people in our destination that all of that affects. We want people when they come to be intentional where they do their dollars. But at the end of the day, this is not something that just started, us promoting our diverse destination, and we'll continue to do that in the best and effective way. And one thing I want to add, two things. There's two partners in here. One, Expedia. We talked about partnerships and how to overcome numbers. Expedia is a great partner. We recently partnered with them to kind of help quantify, if you will, and look at some of those success stories that we talked about more. So I want to acknowledge Nashara. And then another way as far as challenges and overcoming, and thank you, because one of the challenges is Black people in the industry overall, but particularly in our destination. And we have our Black Hospitality Initiative with scholarships and students that's helping to close that gap. So that's one of the ways, at least from the industry, that we're trying to overcome.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
Can I answer the last question one more time?
Go right ahead.
One more thing in the future is to focus on accessibility, and that's the A and DEI, A and B. And just to give you an example, could you raise your hand if you have a disability, if you feel comfortable doing it? Anybody in the room? Raise your hand. Okay. Now, raise your hand if you wear glasses. You have a disability. That's a visual disability. That's my point. So you need to make sure when you're doing meetings and conventions that you're reaching out to people with disabilities, hidden or otherwise.
Okay,
I'm going to leave on that point.
Okay, well, we're going to conclude now. I just want you to join me in thanking our wonderful panelists for their insightful remarks.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for attending.
Thank you.
This is great. All right.
Special thanks to our panel. Our next session is on meetings, incentives, conventions, and expos, the MICE market. You can take a quick coffee. There is coffee available in the lobby, but we will be starting the presentation immediately as soon as we get our next set of panelists mic'd.